Good morning, or well, afternoon. This is day 3 of making a day's worth of meals for ancient Greece. This is the day after the oil fire. I am back with a little more education and ready to try again. Today we are going to be making a dagmon, which was dinner. From sources vary, of course. Like I mentioned during breakfast or agrisma, it varied a bit based on where you were. Some claimed there were 2 types of dinners, an afternoon and then a later one. I will be going what seems to be the Athenian tradition, which was one meal, there would be 2 courses. The first course would be called Citos or Cetos. And this was like the starch. This would be what would fill you up. It would be barley, lentil, beans, soup and broths made out of these things, with some flavor. This would be filling. And then the second course, which was opsin, sorry, which originally meant relish, but it just eventually came to be eaten the good stuff, the flavor. And this would be kind of the start of the show. Whether this would be, if you're in a wealthy family, meat, lamb, bigger fish than you would eat at lunch, shrimp, which is what I'll be doing. This is what would taste good. This is what people would talk about. And dinners were important. Whereas their breakfast and lunch were a little light, they would go all out. And this would be when friends would be invited over, parties and feasts would happen. So let's get started. I am starting with another recipe from Meals and Recipes from Ancient Greece, by Eugenia Salza Prina Riccoti. I'm making a soup. I'm making a polenta. Now, if you're like me, you grew up with polenta, you would know it's kind of similar to grits. It was like ground cornmeal porridge. This is a little different. Another word for it would be chondros. It is described as such. But when making a dish of goat, lamb, or chicken freshly killed, throw fresh grain, barley, in a pan and crush it well, mixing in fragrant oil. When the broth is boiling vigorously, put it in the rest, then cover the pan with a lid and leave it to cook covered, because that way the heavy mixture swells. Serve with a tablespoon of new wine. This came from Nicander of Colophon, one of the texts that Eugenia, I'm assuming I can be first name basis, Eugenia, translated and kind of deciphered recipes from. And actually, in her recipe, she refers to a previous one, which is just barley soup or tisana. So I will be using both. I'll be using this for the base and then substituting with some other things. And so here is the recipe. 1 cup cooked barley, 2 cups shredded lamb or chicken cooked, 1 onion, 1 tablespoon parsley, 3 sage leaves, 2 cups of broth, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and salt and pepper to taste. Now the problem with this is that there was no specification of what type of broth. And so I'm using cooked chicken. I will be crushing it. So I figured I will just use a chicken broth. But I will note that may be inaccurate. It's just kind of how we translate this. And she does note this is, even with just the barley, what I'll be doing is not what they would be. They would be using fresh barley. They would soak it overnight. I have pearl barley. Doesn't need soaking. I'll be crushing it up using this instead. And of course, just like all the other meals, unlike the ancient Greeks, none of these will be fresh. They're as fresh as I can get. But this is also noted to be a still fairly inexpensive meal to make. The lamb or chicken would be the most expensive part, which is why in this it talks of doing it fresh. Either you hunted it or you are wealthy enough to have this meat fresh. So this will probably be one of the more wealthier meals. This will be the first course, and I am going to get started on that. We'll see you in a moment. Alright, so I will be using my herbal mortar and pestle. It's much smaller than one that they would be using for, especially a big batch like this. They would typically have big ones for meals and grains that they would prepare on the regular basis. A lot of times made out of wood or ceramic. Mine is a stone, but that shouldn't make too much of a difference in taste. Simply how long it'll be to prepare it is much smaller than what they would prefer to use. So these small batches. This is going to make terrible audio, so I will kind of ground the first batch, and I'll just kind of keep doing this. I'll probably mute it, speed it up, maybe nerd out about things over it. So. This isn't working. So, after some research, I found I was misinformed. This barley doesn't pack need to soak overnight. So, I have it in a bowl here. I'm going to let it soak. I will see you tomorrow. Alright, welcome back. It is the next day, once again. We have our barley. It has been soaking overnight, as was traditional in the recipe. Thrown in with a little bit of spices and salt. The idea is that it will soften and soak up some of those spices. I have a bit of a correction. The more I was reading into this recipe, is that the barley isn't meant to be ground to a powder. Instead, they want it to be crushed and ground so that it can absorb the flavors of the soup. But they wouldn't actually be turning it into powder like they would for a flour. So I'm going to wash my hands, start pulling this stuff out and putting it in a pot, which is where I'm going to add flour and whatnot, water and whatnot. This will be sped up, so. Alright, so crushed up a bit. I can see some of the seams are starting to open up a bit, but they're still whole, so you can get that barley in your soup. But they're cracked open just enough so they can start absorbing those flavors. One of many. So, yeah. Alright, we had a little camera work issue, but looks like we are filming it once again. I finished the barley. I'm just about to add the water. For 2 cups of water, you need, or 2 cups, sorry, of barley, you need about 4 cups of water. I'm at 8 cups, 4 per cup. Alright, next we want to set this to boil with nothing else but olive oil. Still classic olive oil, this time from Walmart. This time won't cause fire. It just kind of says to pour some in, doesn't measure it out. Just kind of says to taste. This is probably why I started a grease fire the other day. But, let's use a spoon, just mix it in a bit. Goodness. So, we've got a mixture. I'm going to set it to boil. Alright, once it is boiling vigorously, according to the recipe, you're going to mix in the rest of the spices and whatnot, which I'll prepare over here in a little bowl. Alright, so on to the next step, what we're going to do is, before we put together the broth and the spices, we're actually going to shred some chicken. This shredded chicken could be made specifically for this meal. It could also be, a chicken made and then divided up between multiple different meals served at this course. But for the time being, we're just going to make this. The chicken's already cooked, so all we have to do now is shred it. So, I'll be the first to admit, this is not the way that they would have had their chicken prepared. This is a pre-bought rotisserie style chicken from the grocery store, but I think they would appreciate the convenience. The skin, partially because usually, at least in my experience, a lot of times if they want it shredded like this, they want just the meat, they don't want the skin in it. But that's the excuse I'm using, because I'm just going to warm that skin up and eat it. That's my favorite part of the chicken, so that's my little selfish decision. The bones I put aside. I didn't see in any of the textbooks I have, I didn't see any recipes for making broth, making bone broth, anything like that. But it is likely they did. It is highly likely. I would assume that that's what they would use to make the broth that they would add into this. But it doesn't specify anywhere. I'm sure it specifies somewhere. So I will be keeping the bones, making broth of them myself. It's a nice, easy way to make a good broth. But especially back then, earlier civilizations like that, they didn't waste a whole lot of products. If they weren't fashioning the bones into something, then worst case scenario, give it to the dogs or whatever carnivorous animals they had around. But I did leave a little bit of I scooped a little bit of the fat into the mixture with the shreds. I think that's where the flavor is. Some people specifically choose not to cook with it. I couldn't find any mentions here nor there in this book of whether or not to remove the fat. But I believe the fat is crucial to us as our development mentally. From what I've learned in biological and evolutionary anthropology classes I've taken. However, of course, there's also the theory proposed that we actually read earlier in the semester, talking about instead of it being the fat and the access to brains and other crucial high-calorie parts of the animal, that we instead just developed fire earlier, which is also a possibility. But I think until I see a little bit more proof of that, kind of more studies and stuff, I think I'll stick with my current understanding of the fat, the brain is what let us have bigger brains. So it's just a higher calorie intake, I think. I'm not trying to pull from memory of anthropology. It's been a little bit, but okay. It looks pretty shredded. Just kind of grab the last little pieces I missed. Oh, that's worse. Meat wasn't cheap. Back then, if you were wealthier, you were raising chickens, or you'd be able to go buy them in the market. And meat was pretty expensive. You wouldn't want to waste too much of it. From my readings, there was once listed they found prices for a piglet being the equivalent of a civil servant's 3 days of work, being one piglet. And so meat definitely had its places. And it did it was featured in their meals from time to time, stuff like this, where it would go a long ways. But the rest of the time meat was used as sacrifice, which is likely what explains this being shredded chicken from a pre-cooked chicken. Lamb was another option, potentially being leftovers from a sacrifice. But while I do make religious sacrifices, I do not include meat in that, so I will not be doing that. As you would have seen earlier in the video, I can't even get a fish, so I will not be sacrificing a lamb nor a chicken. Alright, seems to be setting up pretty good. Still not boiling, so still have plenty of time. Alright, so again, I'm winging it. It just mentions broth. I'm just going with a chicken broth because my train of logic would be they would be using the bones from this to make whatever broth goes in this. So here's all. Another possibility could, of course, always be using a vegetable broth in this, since vegetables were quite important. It was something that really everyone could grow, had access to, and it was seen as important. Whether or not, it's interesting to wonder, is it just that it's important, and they saw it as like superior. They viewed themselves as better than the others, the barbarians, so to speak, who they claimed didn't consume any vegetables. And it's always curious to wonder if it was important and that's why they grew it, or if because they could grow it and because they had access to it, if that's what made it so important to them and rise up in that the idea of we're better than them because we eat vegetables and they don't. Kind of sounds like them. Modern day vegetarian. I say that with all respect to vegetarians. My best friend's a vegetarian. But okay, so we need 6 sage leaves, 2 tablespoons of parsley. I am officially out of onion. I have a little bit of frozen onion left. Other than that, I do have powdered onion, so I will be using a bit of that to kind of substitute the 1.5 onions this soup calls for. I'm going to get some of these onion juices in there. I'm not going to take these lumps out because they are... I'm going to see if I can defrost them first. I'm looking at my pot and I'm beginning to wonder if I have a big enough pot for all of this. So I have my sage here. It is pre-grown. I keep it frozen. I just prefer keeping, if they're not fresh to pick, I keep them in the freezer. Which I have always been led to believe is very common. But recently I'm learning it's not. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 sage leaves. Okay, I mean parsley. I will confess my cardinal sin to this entire project is I was taught to season with my heart. And so I will not be using a tablespoon. I will be using the bottle it came in, and however much I feel like. Salt and pepper to taste. Ooh, I'm glad I did this. That is a huge piece. And then, I'm black pepper, but that's fine, because I don't like black pepper. I think the saddest part about following these kind of recipes is knowing, like, oh, they would have loved blank, seasoning or blank this to go with this, this meal, and they'll never get, that chance. There's not that chance to go back and say, hey, put this in your dish. Trust me, it'll taste great. Which also means, just like finish the project, I also can't hand it in, no matter how good it probably tastes. And now there's your onions. Okay, I've gotten everything. Yes. That is boiling, so I'm going to start scooping it in. Hold on real quick. I'm going to just kind of have a lot of camera issues today, so I don't want to jinx anything. Oh, this smells amazing. Alright, and now I'm going to leave the lid and I'm going to let it sit and cook. Obviously everything's cooked. Let me check the barley. A little tough. So, no, not. But, oh, is this the right? Oh, on the lid, the second try. Perfect. I'm going to let that soak. I'm going to clean up my mess. Then I'll be right back. Alright, so I've had it simmering with the lid on for a while now. I'm going to pop the lid open for the first time and do a check. Oh my god, that smells good. Oh, wow. So, that's... Oh my god, look at that. When I tell you, I'm so excited to try this. I think this is... I think this is going to be the best one so far. I think... The barley's still a little firm, but it's so good. I like this one. I already know I like this one. I'm not even finished with it yet. Alright, I think it's the moment of truth. Yeah, it still smells good. Off camera, I did add a little bit more parsley, and I found a little bit more onion to add in. Again, I think this would go wonderfully with a lemon or just a lemon pepper, which I may add after this. But here it is. I mean, it's very hearty. It's definitely something that if you're low on cash, you would want to make because it's a lot, and it's cheap. And there's the labor of the longest part of the labor is just the waiting, for it to soak overnight for the barley. But I think this is a really good option. I think it'd be very affordable then, and even now affordable. For the grocery shopping I did for this project, this was the cheapest part. The barley was $3. The chicken was $5. Everything else, it's spices you would have around the house. I already had sage leaves, but if I hadn't, that would have been $3. A lot more expensive than everything else. Everything else cost about $40, and so I think this is one of the inexpensive dinners that to this day remains inexpensive for us. I'm really excited to try this. This smells amazing. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone here to share it with me, but I'm going to pause and I'm going to serve it up. Alright, so welcome back. I have guests, which is really convenient because Greek dinner at Date Known would have usually a pretty big crowd. Technically, it's a little different. They were very gender segregated. We do have a non-man eating with us, which was super frowned upon. But yeah, so we are starting with this first course of soup. You guys are getting the second course. The second course is shrimp.
What?
And I can't afford that much shrimp.
Oh my gosh.
I don't like shrimp.
What's it? Is it just 2 courses?
Yeah. They actually didn't have dessert often unless it was super fancy.
Well, I need to drink a bunch of wine. You probably don't like any more sweets than I.
Yeah, a lot of times they would have just the honey shit because they have sugar. If you guys want more, also you can have more. I'm doing small servings because I don't know if it's good or not.
So what's all in it?
So this is barley, chicken, parsley, onion, chicken broth, and sage.
I'm absolutely obsessed with barley, and I haven't had it so long I've been craving it. I'm used to eat it all as kids, and I forget it exists now. So I'm really excited about it.
So hopefully you can tell me if it's well cooked or not.
Okay.
Where did you find the barley?
Winco bulk.
And you can also get little boxes of it over by the rice. So it's kind of funny because I always forget it exists, but if you look, it's there.
Yeah.
But oh, it's good. It's so good.
So with the wine, I will give you guys a choice. So in ancient Greece, wine was cut with water. It would be like 1 to 3 for water. Otherwise, if you drank wine straight, you would be considered a barbarian. You can be considered a barbarian.
I would like to be
today.
considered a barbarian today.
As well.
I think I've used any other word, maybe not, but.
And it's so funny. Back then, what we now use as barbarian, it just meant others that aren't Greek.
Well, I was just thinking, I wonder if the wine was cut because I was just thinking over, like, I bet the wine was way different back then, and it probably wasn't as good. So I wonder if it, like, was like, more potent and they had to cut it, or it was, like,
it was
like hard liquor.
It was way stronger because it was all like made by the grapes in town.
It's just a cocktail with water.
I have to cut mine because I'm
Can I like the bottle?
Yeah,
Is it a video?
No.
This is the
Also,
bottle.
the barley's really cool.
This is the most Greek wine. I show the camera.
Yeah, it's absolutely the most Greek strawberry wine.
This is even in Greek. Wow.
There we go.
No.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Okay.
Can you get Greek wine here? I bet the co-op would be good.
Probably this was $3. So this also is not going to be good wine.
No, I meant like Greek. Could you get actual Greek wine?
Like,
I know the co-op. They have everything there.
Probably.
Everything. Anyways, okay.
You guys can come in and grab your shit. Whoever's driving gets the smallest cup.
Oh, I don't know what this one cup is.
I think they're all right. You guys grab your balls. You can step in. The
I know.
camera doesn't have to look good.
She's gonna sit here and watch us chat.
Yeah.
Is he?
This is all Ash and I did last night. We made like a shrimp or not shrimp, a fish mixture. But it's very hot. Just
A fish mixture.
Yeah,
So
so
this doesn't sound like the other.
it was literally called bits and pieces, a fish fry.
That's funny. I love all bugs. Words okay, sister.
No noodles. So people who have eaten barley before, what do you think the next? Oh, you also have that? Okay.
No, but that's really good.
Is that
That's really good though, yeah.
I cook cooking well. I'm pretty sure once it bursts, and then it's just soft inside. Kind of good. Before it gets, I think it's kind of chewy before, so you kind of know like what's undesirable. But see how these are like almost pop, like they're soft and kind of popped open.
Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that one. See how that's like burst. You can see the green inside is like swelled.
Yeah,
That's cool.
they're translations of like recipes from like I think like 200 comic or current era. And
Oh,
so
cheers.
Oh yeah.
oh,
You're not listening.
This is the
That's very
barbarians.
nice. Except you. Don't cheers with us. You're not a barbarian.
I'm more civilized.
Barbarian wine. That's pretty good wine.
It's
I love just like white girl wine.
So
it was it's at Winco for like $3 or $4.
Nice.
And I'm like I don't normally drink wine, so I don't need more than one. But
No, there's good cheap wine. My grandparents drink box with Randia. Right, $7 one. $7.
I don't understand why people spend so much on alcohol without all this.
Also, all of that. No, I'm sure not all of it. I'm sure there's a wine out there that is a lot of money that tastes great. But like you said, there's good alcohol that tastes cheap.
it's
Simple flavors.
fermented strawberries. I mean grapes because it's a red wine and not a mix with any other sort of flavor. So
Yes.
they didn't have sugars or anything. Their wines they would usually sweeten up with just honey. But yeah, because
So it was like Greek mead.
kind of yeah, that's kind of
That'd be fun.
right. I would love to like.
There's some flavored meats at the co-op. They're kind of expensive, but you can get like different fruit ones. I wonder if it would taste somewhere.
I
And
I
it's
think that's
not
what mead
meat.
was made out of, right?
Meat was
Honey?
like fermented honey and berries and stuff. Depending on the meat, I think.
But yeah, this was in total the chicken's just open cooked rotisserie chicken. It's 2 pounds of barley for $3. The rotisserie chicken was like $6, and then it's just sage leaves, parsley, and a can of chicken broth. And chicken
It's
broth is
delicious.
necessary. I'm in love with the smell.
I'm not a fan of onions, but like I can't even like.
Right? It
Yeah,
blends in so
it
well.
does.
Everything I've like all of the Greek recipes I've cooked with onions so far, they find a way to eliminate it, which is great. 'Cause I also hate onions.
Well, this is the
Honestly,
thing.
like-
Onions are good if you cut them small and use them for flavor. Well, okay, I like onions, but if you don't like onions,
I don't like the consistency of onions.
my mom doesn't either, and she always just chops them very small because the flavor adds a lot. Even just onion powder, if you can't like do that texture, adds so much.
I always do onion butter. And it's always such a shame when like I bet this would. I don't even know if I have it right now. But I bet this would fucking slap. Slap
Oh,
with
yeah.
like lemon or lemon pepper.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't have lemons yet, and so it's that like man. I
Chocolate
wish,
sheet, you know.
I wish I could go back and be like, hey, promise, I just put a little bit of lemon here. Oh, it'd be amazing. Rock your socks. If you want, I can take a picture of it. I'm trying to find the book to by itself. It's
The recipe?
yeah.
There's
It's
a lot that you can
Cool.
just check out. Good books.
That's really cool.
So the first half is like the translated text from this like kind of cookbook, and then the other half is recipes. And they have recipes for like swordfish and electric rays
Wow.
and moray eels because they would eat that.
Wow.
I'm like,
My uncle has a German screen on van that's not playing right after the you. Fun fact for your professor.
thank you.
He's the lead singer.
Check out their latest album.
I kind of love that.
It's really good. Yeah, like it's so hearty and it like
Mm-hmm.
it feels so many. There's so much here.
Yeah.
Feels like
Barley
something
is a banging, dude.
That was really good.
like absolutely send you guys some. Maybe this will be when we start family dinners back up. Maybe I'll
Oh,
do the
yeah,
first,
this will
I'll
be
do
a
the
good
first one
one.
and make this.
Yeah.
Make something else. Like it's cheap for a huge fucking thing.
How long did it take you to make it?
The longest part was I had to soak the barley.
I guess the chicken was already made, so that, yeah.
Oh, and that's it's so nice. The recipe calls for that.
I bet you can make this in a crock-pot version so it can soak all day.
Right.
I have a sealable crock-pot too, so you can play around with it.
I think.
Or you know the ones you chill with.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So like, oh, I might try this as a crock pot.
Because none of the barley can cook for a while, and then you can get frozen chicken and throw it in there.
Ooh.
And it can cook all day and you shred it. I can.
I think so. Like I was never considered barley as like a food, but
I grew up with beef and barley. I was raised. I lived with my grandma quite a bit, and she was raised on like a farm in Idaho, so they like, like you know, very like a lot more grains and like more simply than I feel like you know. Like I got like every kind of freaking hot cereal there is, man. Any kind of grain pretty much can be turned into hot cereal. My grandma used to put wheat kernels that are about that texture when they're a little bit chewier actually, and she put it in the crock pot overnight with like milk and cinnamon and sugar and vanilla, and then we eat them the next day. And they actually, I was like, oh, it's actually kind of light, but they're very chewy, like even more chewy than that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit funny, and they kind of squeak. They're called squeaky wheat because they kind of squeak when you chew them.
I think it makes a really good base of like just exploring like different seasonings too. Like
Yeah.
I would love to just make this and pour a bunch of shit in it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you could add any veggies you want. You could add potato, celery, or peppers. Or you could like really. Barley's just so easy. Beef and
Celery
barley is
would be
very classic
really
too.
good.
Like beef stew with barley nut, we could do that.
It's so cheap too. Yeah, it's £2 for and it was in the bulk for like $3,
Yeah.
and it expanded really.
Yeah.
And it's super hearty, you know what I mean?
Well, thank you guys for coming over and experiencing this with me.
They're not big, so help us.